If you're a growth oriented person on a mission to create more love, happiness, and success in your life, this podcast is for you. I'm Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby. I'm founder of Growing Self Counseling and Coaching. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, a licensed psychologist, a certified coach, and every week I'm here as your partner in growth to help you create transformation in your life. And today we're talking about something that can be very challenging, surprisingly so, which is how to know what you really want in life. Sometimes it's obvious, but when it comes to life's really big decisions, figuring out your heart's true desire isn't always so simple. It takes a lot of self awareness, life experience, and honestly, a lot of trial and error to get the clarity that you need and the confidence to move forward. And, doing this work, getting that clarity, getting that confidence is so fundamentally important because people who don't really know what they want don't get what they want. They get what someone else wants for them. They get what's already in reach. They get what just shows up. They're not designing their lives. And most of us don't even start thinking about what we want in our lives until, honestly, we reach a low point or we are experiencing life circumstances that we're not particularly happy with. And then, only then, do we begin taking this question seriously. And this can be a tough path. You might find yourself in the middle of a career that doesn't feel meaningful or fulfilling for you. You might have chosen some bad relationships and, feel very disappointed or even heartbroken in the aftermath of that. We might even follow along in the wake of others rather than charting our own course. So, I have lots prepared for you in today's podcast. We're going to be talking about many different elements of this experience. I have a whole presentation put together for you. In particular, we're going to be talking about the obstacles to this clarity. We're also going to be talking about some time tested techniques to help you transform your experience into one of clarity and self knowledge. At the end, we'll be talking about takeaways and then wrapping it up with some action steps for you. So, to dive into this, the very first step in getting clarity about what you want in life is first understanding what the obstacles to clarity actually are. They'll sneak up on you if you're not aware of them. And these, in my experience, come in four different flavors, basically. One of the biggest is actually having undefined values. And that's because, we can all say that we want happiness or love or success without fully realizing that these are subjective. Furthermore, they're not things that we achieve. They're more like a skill that you can practice. Those things need to be unpacked at a deep level so that you can connect it with a vision of what it really looks like in your own life. Because, like, my definition of happiness is probably going to look very different from yours. And so to get granular about it, attach it to pictures, to images, to outcomes, that's one thing that can help you move forward. Furthermore, when it comes to things like, I want to be happy, it's also true that we can often attach anticipation of feeling a certain way to our life circumstances. So, meaning that our lives will be complete and we will finally feel happy once we've attained these different life goals. So, for example, like, if I'm married, then I'll be happy. If I have a family or make more money or change careers, then I'll finally feel the way that I want to. But the catch is that happiness, fulfillment don't wait for the future. They start right now. And so, in order to be able to get out of your own way, it can be really useful to think about, how are you living your purpose right this very second and be aware that you're probably not going to feel that much differently, no matter what your life circumstances are, to a degree. And I know that that can be difficult to wrap your head around, but that exercise, just in understanding what would it take for me to feel better than I do right this very second in my own life and my circumstances as they are, can actually be quite liberating, because then it helps you redefine your values and think about the life that you would enjoy, what would give you meaning and purpose and fulfillment, rather than expecting that you would feel differently once you had attained this mythical outcome. But another big challenge and an obstacle to clarity is unraveling your own blind spots. So, what I mean by that is that we all have an inability to be fully self aware, particularly when it comes to things like mindset and core programming. I still struggle with this myself. I talk about this with people all the time, and then I bump into my own mindsets or core beliefs. Often, if I'm saying things out loud or if I'm journaling and think, oh, yeah, that is still there, it can be very difficult to shine a flashlight on our own, inner landscape and be able to see it with real clarity. And it's very important in your personal growth process to be able to do this, because if you have a unhelpful mindset, self-limiting core beliefs, or this mental filter that obscures things, you won't feel happy, even when you have every reason in the world to do so. And also, with the right mindset, you can feel content with your life even when you have some problems to solve or obstacles to overcome. And this also correlates with getting clarity about your values. If you have blind spots or parts of yourself that feel unknown even to yourself, it's difficult to connect with your inner truth. And then, furthermore, another big obstacle to clarity that many people face, young people and even older people, can be all this noise that comes from messages we've received or that we think we've received from our family, friends, society at large, messages that tell us not who we really are, but who we should be, what would be considered valuable or admirable in the eyes of others. And when we over index those, it carries us away from our confidence in our own selves and our certainty about what really the right path is for us. So, those are three major obstacles. However, another huge obstacle for many people is this experience of overthinking. It turns into paralysis. You might call it overthinking, perfectionism, like really struggling to find the right thing. And it is just so incredibly easy to get stuck and not even know why or how. And again, this ties back into a blind spot. You might not even be realizing it's happening when it's happening, but a tendency towards perfectionism or being very focused on the right thing can create this experience of paralysis that really holds us hostage. It prevents us from feeling like we can take the next step. And the truth is, in reality, it often doesn't matter that much what next action we take, as long as we are moving forward in some form or fashion for reasons that I'll explain to you here in a minute. But, the truth is, reality, what we're doing now, the decisions that we make in the moment, doesn't matter as much as we think it does. It's not that fraught, right? Going back to that first idea that you're probably about as happy as you're going to be, no matter what your life circumstances are, because of the inner growth work you do. That concept in itself oftentimes liberates many people from this what's the right choice, because it frees them up to experiment with making a choice and then moving on the path of clarity, again, which we'll talk about in a moment. So, when you are overthinking, you're oftentimes more focused on problems that you might experience, failures, whatever that word means, or thinking about what you don't want in your life. And by focusing on those things, it can really deprive you of the growth experiences that you need in order to get authentic clarity. So many times in my work as a coach, in particular, I have to spend a lot of time with my clients, kind of shaking that up and breaking it apart in order for them to feel like they can be free enough to just experiment and move into this path of discovery. So, with that in mind, here's one pro tip for you when it comes to overthinking and perfectionism. If you've noticed these tendencies in yourself, is to experiment with something that I call the wise mind compared to the inner critic. I have recorded podcasts in the past on the experience of inner criticism. And really, I define it simply as having this part of you that is just a naysayer to everything. Maybe it's telling you negative things about yourself, but maybe it's also telling you negative things about the world. It's pointing out all the problems, all the pitfalls. And while some of that is certainly helpful, like it can keep you out of trouble, it can also obscure your wise mind and this part of yourself that if you listen to it and tap into it, it can just whisper to you, helping you understand. Yeah, you know what? You could do this. Maybe it isn't the perfect thing, but it will carry you forward. It will help you connect to this inner truth that will ultimately lead you to a more fulfilling life. And so, one way of telling the difference between your inner critic versus your wise mind, how does it make you feel? In my experience, if your inner critic, your inner naysayer is active, you're going to feel paralyzed, you're going to feel uncertain. The inner narrative is going to be either I can't or I must do XYZ. If you're shitting yourself all over the place, that's evidence that your inner critic is being active. Whereas your wise mind, again, in my experience, it feels much more hopeful. It feels more self compassionate, and it helps you see the possibilities instead of the limitations. So, cast about in your own mind and your own experience to see if you can tell the difference between those two and experiment with listening to your wise mind. So, moving on. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the paths to clarity. So, this is also really important. And what may be interesting or new is to understand that for many, if not most people, the path to clarity is quite hard won and oftentimes comes from the obstacles in our path, the adversity that we experience. We don't grow despite the bad things that happen to us. We grow because of them. It's only because of having these life experiences that we get pushed into contact with who we really are, what our values are, how we feel about things, the metal that we're made of. And it's from that that we get the confidence and the clarity that can then move us forward. And so this path to clarity process helps us recalibrate our inner compass, get back in touch with what we feel our deepest desires, our sense of who and what we truly are. And this empowerment to live more intentionally, starting with a core belief of, I deserve to have a life that I feel good about, that really represents who I am and what I'm about. And again, it is often not until we go through hard things, have things not work out the way we wanted to, or experience discomfort in our lives that we really make contact with our values based parts of ourselves as well as our feelings. So, for example, when we go through shocking life experiences, we have breakdowns, we bump into something that is just so hard, experiences of grief or loss, even trauma. So, lost relationships, having a career experience, professional experience that was not good. Those kinds of things can shake us up and almost wake us up. It feels like we're having a breakdown, but if you have support to kind of go down into that deeply, you will bounce off this bottom having made contact and coming back up with a deeper awareness of what is really most important to you. So, as a therapist, as a coach, I'm routinely asking my clients questions like, what about that was so painful for you? Or what does this experience mean for you? What is this connected to? You know, one of the things that I talk about often is how I think we're all socialized in this world to avoid dark emotions. I will not call them negative emotions, I call them dark emotions. Anger, hurt, grief, loss, emotional pain. Um, it's natural to instinctively push yourself away from these kinds of things, or try to, you know, not experience them, right? So that's when all this psychological and emotional numbing comes in. Distraction, workaholism, certainly, addictive substances or behaviors. And that is a strategy. But when you do those things, even though maybe you might feel better temporarily in the moment, you're also blocking this emotional experience that's really crucial to help you understand yourself at deeper levels, and also this like engine of growth that it can't work if you're like muffling it and trying to stop it. Similarly, when we embrace the pain that we experience in different life domains, um, there is so much self awareness and self knowledge that comes from that. So if you're feeling dissatisfied with your career, one approach is, oh, why do I feel dissatisfied? Must be something wrong with me, or I'm going to burn this career down and just get a different job or do something completely different. Like you could, but it's a much richer experience to dig into the why. Why does this not feel good to me? What do I not like about this relationship or friendship? Or what about living in this environment, or my habits, my routines, my life circumstances? What about this is connected with a pain point for me? So the key here is reconceptualizing pain as information. Your emotional guidance system is offering you insight, self awareness into, hey, this hurts. I don't like this feeling. So, what does this mean? Again, it can be very tempting to numb ourselves from these experiences, but when we try to muffle all of these, it's very hard to really get access, to gain insight and self awareness. So, what we do instead is really become committed to seeking growth, even from failures, even from, life circumstances that can feel difficult, things that we don't like. To be able to say to yourself, what did I just learn from this experience? What did this teach me about who I am, what I want, or maybe even how I would like to handle this situation differently next time? So, whenever we can turn adversity into an opportunity for growth, we then have access to all of this empowerment as well as self knowledge and increasing confidence and clarity about what we want next time. It's all investments in this self awareness process that is so crucial. So, those are paths to clarity. Might not sound particularly fun or appealing, but I can tell you that this is actually how it works. And I am here to tell you the truth. So, it is what it is. But this is also why, for so many people, it's really crucially important to have a trustworthy partner in this transformational process, because without it, we have a tendency to avoid the experiences or minimize the experiences that will really help us create self awareness. So, for example, this is why working with a coach can be incredibly helpful. It's not for everybody, and I'm certainly not here to like sell you on the idea of coaching, but I want to be a trustworthy partner for you. And what I have experienced both personally, but also through my work, is that it can be really challenging to gain the insight, the self awareness, the illumination of the blind spots without having someone else who can reflect things back to you and help you see new possibilities that might be difficult for you to see on your own. That is not true for everyone. I personally, I'm able to do some of this work through things like journaling, through, I think, intentionally putting myself in growth promoting experiences that help me just gain access to deeper parts of my mind. Something I think that can be very helpful is just experimenting with lots of different activities to try them on and see how they feel. Reading books can really help me personally kind of gain self awareness or have new ideas that can stimulate different parts of myself. Again, it's creating these new possibilities. So, also, even, talking to trusted friends, meeting new people, these are all doorways to self awareness that everybody has access to. And in my experience, I habitually have worked with, during different periods of my own life, therapists, which at a certain place in time when I was struggling with things that were really more diagnostic, that was helpful for me. And I have gotten so much out of working with very well informed and trustworthy coaches who can help me see things that I am not able to see on my own. And also, I think, develop clarity and confidence to take a next step in the right direction, even if I'm not like 100% sure yet that it's the right thing to do. When somebody's in my corner, I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And it has been really transformational for me to find and connect with those kind of supporters in my own life. So I just wanted to share that with you because I think it's helpful. And part of this process, though, is that from these self awareness generating experiences, then we can begin to set some goals to think about what would I like to work towards? What would I like to have that is different than what I have right now? With, I just want to validate the fact that setting meaningful goals can be really hard, particularly if we haven't yet done that self awareness work. I think sometimes people believe that they should just be able to jump over that, introspective part and have clarity and have confidence to set the goals and go after the things. Um, but the truth is that most of us really don't know what to move towards, um, let alone the obstacles we'll face along the way. And so that's why I just spent so much time in this podcast talking about the importance of diving into those dark places and spending time on values, on pain points, on gaining that self awareness, because it's only through that type of meaningful, deeper growth work that we can come back out with meaningful goals that are inspiring and that are hopeful. So, if you take nothing else from this podcast, take that. If you're finding it difficult to set goals and move towards them, it may be an indication that you actually need to spend more time going into that kind of vague fog of, I don't know what to do. And with really like with the intention of understanding that with self compassion and with patience and with an appreciation for the fact that that is the process of getting clarity. And if you haven't given yourself permission to do that, that is a huge obstacle to creating the kind of transformation that you're seeking. Um, and it is also true that you don't have to be sure about what the next right step is before you can begin taking action. So there's like long-term big picture goals, and there is also shorter term, what is the next right step? And in my experience, if you can focus on the next right step, having maybe a general, even vague idea of what you want in the future, it's another thing that will empower you to take action. And the reason why that is so important, taking action, is because greater clarity and self-awareness comes through taking action, AKA trial and error. You have to try things and have life experiences in order to gain clarity about who you are, what feels good, what doesn't. And so a hugely self-limiting belief is this idea that I have to figure it all out, and that when I take an action, it has to be the right action. And if that action doesn't lead to the outcomes I want, it means that I have failed. No, it means that you have been so courageous, and that if you have had an experience, I'm not even going to call it failure. That's just so dumb. You had an experience that taught you something about yourself. You were open to a growth and learning experience that gave you increased clarity about who you are and what you want. Story. My family and I, we are big travelers. We're vagabonds. I can often be found in RV parks. We go for like long distances. My husband and I actually spent over a year at a time living in like an old Airstream with our family, just kind of taking in the world and blowing around in the wind, because at one point we discovered that our core values and the things that made us feel happy and fulfilled were congruent with having a more nomadic lifestyle. And so we pursued that. We didn't know exactly what we wanted at first. We didn't know how it would go. We had a lot of trials and tribulations because of that. But ultimately, because we were living in alignment with our values and the things that were linked to not just like happiness, but kind of bigger picture life satisfaction, they were ultimately very positive experiences. So anyway, that was just a preamble to tell you that not too long ago, I was hanging out at an RV park. We were passing through Nebraska, of all places. And I just started talking to this young woman who worked there. And this was a town in Nebraska that is, not a big city by many standards, but for Nebraska, it was a fairly, major metropolitan area. And she was telling me about how at one time the dream of her life had been to move to this big city and experience all that it had to offer. And she was probably, I would say, in her mid-20s. And that now, where she was now, after having lived there for a couple of years, her dream is actually to move back home to the ranch in northern Nebraska to, do the ranching things and be on the land and be back in the open spaces. And I was just so struck by this small exchange. I mean, we were just chatting for like 3 minutes. But what she was telling me was, I did it. I took action. I tried something. And she was not saying, oh, I did the right thing by moving to the city for a little while. She was saying, I learned so much more about who I am and what I really want because of this experience. And so then she had plans to go back to the community that she came from having increased clarity and confidence that that was the right place for her in the world. And if she hadn't have tried that and had that life experience, she might have, stayed in that community, but maybe if it felt bad about it. If I lived in the big city, I would feel happier. I would feel more fulfilled. But she was courageous enough to try that, see what it was like, and then come back home again with this certainty that this is my place. This is what's right for me. So it's through all of these life experiences that we develop ourselves. Every time we take action and we put ourselves into a new situation, it changes us. If you let it, it has the potential to, as long as you stay connected to that growth mindset. That what did I learn here? And so that is what one of the most important aspects of coaching has been for me, is that it helps me, and I think it also helps my clients get clear about, okay, here's what I could do now. Here's a life experience that I could have. It feels safe. It creates a supportive container for growth. I can come back to my coach and say, well, that didn't work, and kind of unpack why, or say, I didn't like that and I'm not going to do that again. Which again is so enormously powerful, because you really can't grow without it. And I will also just share personally that 9 times out of 10, that's not what I'm saying when I come back to my coach. I'm saying, I wish I'd done that sooner, or here's what I've learned, or oh my gosh, this was transformational. And so again, just to have that kind of support in your life. Briefly, but just before moving on, I will give you a word of big sisterly advice, which is, as always, choose your support person very, very wisely. Many therapists are trained in the diagnosis and treatment of mental health conditions. They are not trained in coaching psychology, and they do not know how to walk people through a coaching-oriented personal growth process that isn't really rooted in that psychopathology. So consider looking for a therapist who practices coaching enthusiastically. That's one of the things that makes my practice very different, and why people have different experiences at Growing Self is because we have only therapists on our team, but they're very well versed in coaching psychology and can practice these transformational coaching modalities within the framework of a very deep, even therapeutic experience that's based on evidence-based forms of counseling psychology. And so I think there's a good balance there. On the other side, if you seek out a life coach who is not grounded as a therapist, many/most coaches, even certified coaches, don't have the same level of training and experience to help clients have really deep experiences and go into those deep, introspective, and insightful places that somebody who has a background in therapy can take you. Most coaches don't have any training or credentialing at all, but even the ones that do often just want to jump to the, okay, what do we do about it? As opposed to helping you kind of sit with that personal growth, deeper work that is where the engine of transformation comes from. So you can learn more about how to find a good coach on my website, growingself.com. Go to the life coaching section, and on any page in that section, you'll find a whole knowledge base of articles that I've written for you around what is coaching, what do coaches do, how to find a good coach, just so that you can, I'm a huge believer that knowledge is power, so that you can learn more about what this is, what your options are, for the purpose of being able to make fully informed decisions if you're considering finding your own partner. So I just wanted to offer that to you. Okay, so with that in mind, that is the transformational process and a little bit about how it works. But next, let's talk about the main takeaways here. So, what we've just talked about, this isn't necessarily about just setting goals. It is processing who you are, where you've been, how you feel about that. It's about gaining the self awareness that uncovers things about you and that drives your personal growth at a deep level. It's also reshaping your narrative. When you reshape your narrative about where you've been, how you feel, what it all means, you become increasingly clear about who you are, what's important to you. And that is where this confidence comes from around what you really want in life. In particular, too, cultivating a growth mindset is crucially important. So, growth mindset means that we are all on a path of change and development that never ends, honestly. We are all on this growth trajectory, and that as you work towards these things, whether it's your uncovering of self awareness, whether it's the process of experimentation, a growth mindset helps you feel comfortable in the process itself because it's not about attaining something, it's about what did I learn? How did I just develop? What am I now aware of that I wasn't aware of before? So, when you have this kind of internal support for your life experience, that is how we develop over time. And it also gives you a lot of confidence to be who you are right now, feel good about that, and also develop a growth identity that allows you to take the next right action and also liberates you from this most self limiting belief, which is that you have to know exactly what to do before you can do it. Talk to anybody who is a happy, satisfied person in middle age or later in life. Get them to tell you about their life. And what they will describe to you is having had chapters. When I was in my 20s, I did this. I traveled the world. I spent, you know, 10 years as a chef. And then I had this life experience, this self-discovery process that made me become aware that I wanted something different. And then I embarked on a new chapter. I moved to a different place. I pursued a different career. Maybe I pursued a different relationship, but it's like life kind of happens in chapters. And if you can accept that, you know, that you're not going to make the right choice and all of a sudden be in the perfect place that you'll be for the rest of your life and bronze yourself and stay there forever, it helps you embrace this, like, just the wildness of life. I'll direct you back to a podcast that I recorded a while ago with a career coach in my practice. Such an inspiring story. This career coach who I work with, her name is Ronnie. And Ronnie is in her late 70s and began working with my counseling practice as an early career coach, meaning that she actually recently graduated from counseling school to become a career counselor. And it was so much fun talking to her in this podcast about all of the life chapters that she has lived through and how those life experiences made her feel so passionate about becoming a career coach to really like shepherd other people through those different chapters of life from this wisdom of experience that she has personally had. Such an inspiring story. So I would encourage you to check that out. If you want to listen to it, you can go to growingself.com, go to the blog and podcast page. You'll see it in the main nav of my website. And from there, go into the success collection and enter into career clarity. And you'll find that podcast there, as well as others related to the journey towards career clarity. But that when you reshape this narrative as I am a constantly growing and evolving person, this is where I am now, this is what's next next to me, and there's going to be something even better, I bet, on the other side of that. You liberate yourself to begin moving forward again. And then, very lastly, last takeaway is get trustworthy support. Um, Individually, you can find support people in your life, friends, who's a cheerleader, who's somebody that you can talk to that helps you see new possibilities for yourself and helps you feel empowered to take the next right action and learn and grow. And if you don't have that, or if you would like more of that, or really somebody who's dedicated to being that person for you, consider getting a really trustworthy coach, specifically a therapist who specializes in coaching. That would be my advice. So, action items for you. If you would like to, I have yet another resource. If you go to my website, you can find the What's Holding You Back self-assessment. This is a quiz that I designed to help people get clarity about some of the inner obstacles that might be, just getting in the way of their growth. So if you take this quick assessment, you will get a report back that gives you more clarity around which domain of life is worthy of your continued exploration in order to just start getting clarity, start getting self-awareness, so uncovering those obstacles. I hope that that helps just serve as one tool that contributes to your self-discovery process. And also, of course, if you would like to connect with a coach on my team, you are invited. Come to growingself.com, click on Get Started, and you can put in a request to see if we have an expert that is perfect for you. So you can learn all about that at growingself.com. But I hope that this was helpful for you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. This is one of my favorite subjects. I love talking about just the growth trajectory. And I hope that you got some helpful takeaways from it. If you would like more along these lines, you can also enter the personal growth collection that I have for you. Again, come to growingself.com. When you go to the blog and podcast page, enter into the happiness section, and then you'll find the personal growth collection that I've created for you that has some of my favorite podcasts on the subject of personal evolution, personal transformation, and you'll also find articles that I've written, that other people on my team have written. It's all there for you to support your journey of growth. All right, so that's it for today. I'll be back in touch next week with another episode. In the meantime, take care.